She hid in a stranger's car to escape a forced marriage unaware. The man was a billionaire who'd change her life. Hello, everyone. Before we begin today's story, I have a small favor to ask. Please hit subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you never miss our channel's new videos. It's quick, free, and the best way to support us in bringing you more dramatic stories. Your support means the world to us. Where are you watching from? Drop your city or country in the comments below. Thank you very much. Now, let's return to our main character. The night was soaked in rain, the kind that blurs the line between tears and storm water. Lena's wedding gown clung to her legs as she ran barefoot down the muddy driveway. Her breath sharp, her heart hammering against the corset that felt more like a cage. Behind her, voices shouted her name, angry, desperate, echoing off the stone walls of the mansion she was supposed to call home. She didn't look back. The headlights of a black car flared at the curve of the road. Without thinking, she pulled the heavy skirt up and sprinted toward it. The car was unlocked. She yanked the door open and crawled into the back seat, trembling, clutching her soaked bouquet as if it could still protect her. Her fingers were shaking so badly she could barely breathe. "Please don't see me. Please just drive," she whispered under her breath. The driver's door opened. A man's voice, calm, deep, American accent with the faintest edge of exhaustion cut through the rain. "Who the hell?" He froze. Their eyes met in the rearview mirror. His sharp, storm gray, hers wide and terrified. Mud smeared across her white dress. Mascara streaked her cheeks. "Please," she gasped. "Just drive. I'll explain later, I promise." For a moment, he didn't move. The wipers hissed across the windshield. Then, with a small sigh, he turned the key. The engine roared to life, and the car lurched forward into the storm. Lena's body shook as she tried to catch her breath. The man in the driver's seat didn't ask where or why. His jaw tightened, his hands steady on the wheel. The silence stretched, heavy, but strangely safe. "You're bleeding," he said finally, glancing at her wrist, where the thin lace had torn. "It's nothing," she murmured, pressing it to her lap. "They'll stop chasing soon." "Who?" he asked, voice low. She looked out the window. Rain streaking past, like a film reel. "My fiancé," she said softly. "Well, my father's choice, not mine." He said nothing, but the slight shift in his gaze, half disbelief, half concern, didn't escape her. The car's interior smelled of cedar and rain. His phone buzzed once on the dashboard. A message preview flashed. "Board meeting moved to 9 a.m. Mr. Reed." She didn't notice the name, but the man's finger brushed the screen to silence it before she could look. Miles disappeared beneath the tires. The city lights thinned. When he finally spoke again, his tone was quieter, almost reluctant. "You don't have a coat?" She shook her head. Without a word, he shrugged off his own dark wool, warm, and handed it back. It draped over her shoulders like armor. "Thank you," she whispered. "You don't even know me." "Maybe that's the point," he said. Outside, thunder rolled over the hills. But inside that car, the world felt suspended between fear and safety. Strangers bound by one impossible night. She didn't know it yet, but the man beside her, this silent stranger, wasn't just her rescuer. He was the billionaire who would change the course of her life forever. The rain softened into a steady whisper against the windshield as they drove through the sleeping city. Lena sat in the back seat, clutching the wool coat around her shoulders, watching the faint glow of streetlights flicker past. The stranger's name, she had learned after several minutes of silence, was Alex. He spoke little, his voice calm and deliberate, the kind of voice that carried authority even in whispers. When the storm grew heavier, he slowed the car and turned off the highway onto a narrow country road lined with tall pines. "We will stop for a while," he said, pulling into a secluded property near a lake. The house looked more like a modern cabin than a mansion, large windows, warm light spilling onto the wet gravel. Lena hesitated before following him inside. Everything smelled like cedar and coffee, clean and steady, like him. "You can rest here," he said simply, setting a folded towel on the couch. "There is a guest room upstairs. I will make some tea." She murmured a soft thank you, her voice barely audible over the ticking clock. Her hands still trembled when she accepted the steaming mug. The warmth brought her back to herself, enough to speak. "You really did not have to help me," she said. "You could have called the police." Alex looked at her for a moment before answering. "You did not look like a criminal. You looked like someone who needed to breathe." His words hung in the air, heavy and strangely kind. For the first time that night, Lena let out a weak laugh, one that caught even her by surprise. She sat near the window, staring at the rain streaking down the glass. "My father thinks marriage is a solution to everything," she said quietly. "Debt, reputation, appearances. But I would rather be broke than belong to someone I do not love." Alex leaned against the doorframe, arms crossed, studying her. "You are braver than you think," he said. "Running takes courage too." The electricity flickered, then steadied. She noticed a half-finished painting on an easel by the wall, a serene view of the same lake outside. Sunlight cutting through the trees. "You paint?" she asked softly. "Sometimes," he replied. "When I need to remember there is more to life than deals and deadlines." She smiled faintly. "You sound like someone who works too much." "Maybe," he said, his eyes distant. "But tonight, I am just someone offering a place to rest." He left her then, and for the first time in years, Lena slept without fear. When morning light spilled across the floor, she woke to the sound of coffee brewing. Her wedding dress, still damp, hung neatly by the window. Alex was sitting at the kitchen counter, reading something on his tablet. "Good morning," he said. "There are clothes in the guest room closet. They should fit." She blinked, surprised. "How do you always have things ready for emergencies?" He smiled slightly. "Preparation is a habit." While she changed, he stepped outside to take a call. Through the open door, his voice drifted in, calm but commanding. "Reschedule the board meeting. Tell them I will handle the Singapore deal remotely." She did not catch every word, but the tone measured, decisive made her pause. Whoever he was, this was no ordinary man. When he returned, he handed her a sandwich and gestured to the porch. "You should eat," he said. "You have not eaten since last night." She took a bite, the taste simple but grounding. The lake shimmered under the new sun, quiet and golden. "Thank you," she said again, more firmly this time, "for everything." "You do not need to thank me," he said. "Sometimes the right thing to do is obvious." She met his eyes and felt something shift. Trust, maybe, or the fragile beginning of it. He turned away as if sensing her thoughts. "You should rest a little longer. I will drive you to the bus station this afternoon." Lena nodded, but a strange ache stirred in her chest at the idea of leaving. She did not know that the man sitting across from her, the one who had given her shelter, was Alexander Reed, one of the most powerful billionaires in the country. To her, he was simply Alex, the stranger who had saved her from a night that could have destroyed her life. By noon, the storm had cleared, leaving the world washed clean and quiet. Lena stood on the porch, the borrowed clothes soft against her skin, watching the sunlight dance over the surface of the lake. The air smelled of pine and wet earth, a scent she thought she would remember forever. Alex stepped out beside her, 2 cups of coffee in hand. He offered one to her without a word. "You look better," he said, his tone calm but gentle. "A little sleep helps," she replied, managing a small smile. "I cannot remember the last time I felt safe enough to close my eyes." He nodded, his gaze fixed on the horizon. "Safety is rare," he said softly. "But everyone deserves it." She studied him for a moment, curious about the man who spoke like someone who had seen both sides of power. You talk like someone who has been through a lot, she said. He let out a quiet breath that could have been a laugh. Maybe I have. But I learned that sometimes, saving someone else helps you remember what it means to be human. His words lingered in her mind as they drove into town later that day. The road curved through rolling hills and golden fields, sunlight streaming through the open windows. Lena watched the scenery pass, trying to hold on to the calm before she faced reality again. When they reached the bus station, Alex parked near the curb. She turned to him, hesitant. I do not know how to thank you, she said. You do not owe me anything, he replied. Just promise me you will not go back to the people who hurt you. She nodded. I promise. He handed her a folded envelope. There is a card inside. If you ever need help, call that number. She frowned, unsure whether to accept. Alex, I cannot take this. You can, he said simply, because someday you might need to. Their eyes met for a brief second that felt longer than it should have. Then, she stepped out of the car, clutching the envelope to her chest. As the bus pulled away, she turned back to look through the window, but his car was already gone, a dark blur swallowed by the city. Days turned into weeks. Lena found a small apartment above a flower shop and took a job arranging bouquets. The work was quiet, but it gave her purpose. Every morning she tied ribbons. Every evening she locked the door and looked out at the street, wondering if she would ever see him again. She never opened the envelope, though she kept it on her nightstand. One afternoon, as she was closing up the shop, a black sedan stopped across the street. Two men stepped out, dressed in suits too formal for the neighborhood. Miss Hart? One of them asked. Her stomach dropped. Yes? Your father has been looking for you. You need to come with us. Panic surged through her. I'm not going anywhere, she said firmly, but they stepped closer, their tone turning cold. It will be easier if you cooperate. Before she could react, a familiar voice cut through the air. I would listen to the lady. The men froze. Alex stood a few feet away, hands in his coat pockets, calm but unmistakably in control. The men glanced at each other, then stepped back. Mr. Reed, one of them stammered. We did not know. Now you do, Alex said evenly. Leave. They obeyed without another word, retreating to their car. Lena stared at him, stunned. Mr. Reed? She repeated. He exhaled, almost sheepishly. I was hoping you would not hear it like that. You are a billionaire, she whispered. All this time, and you never said a word. You needed help, he said. Not headlines. The truth settled between them, both heavy and freeing. For the first time since that night, Lena did not feel small. She looked up at him, tears in her eyes but a smile on her lips. So, Alex Reed, she said softly, do you always rescue strangers in the rain? He smiled, and the warmth in his expression made her heart skip. Only the ones who change everything. For a long moment, Lena could not move. The words, Mr. Reed, still echoed in her mind, like a bell that refused to fade. Alex Reed, the quiet man who had offered her safety in the middle of a storm, was not just kind. He was one of the most powerful men in the country. The realization made her heart twist with disbelief and gratitude all at once. He broke the silence first. You are shaking, he said softly. Let us go somewhere safe. She hesitated, then nodded. Within minutes, they were in his car again, driving through the fading afternoon light. The city blurred by, the air between them heavy with things unsaid. When they stopped in front of a tall glass building overlooking the bay, Lena stared in awe. The entrance bore his name, Reed Holdings. You work here? She asked, half teasing, half stunned. Something like that, he replied with a faint smile as he opened the door for her. The lobby gleamed with marble floors and quiet efficiency. Everyone they passed greeted Alex with a mix of respect and nervousness, but his attention stayed on her. He guided her to a private elevator and pressed the top floor. The doors opened into a wide office with floor-to-ceiling windows framing the ocean beyond. It was nothing like the cabin by the lake. This place spoke of power, precision, and control. Yet she noticed a single painting on the wall, the same lake view she had seen him working on that night. "You brought it here," she said quietly. He followed her gaze. "It reminds me of peace," he said simply. "And of the night I met someone who reminded me that peace is earned, not bought." His voice softened, and she felt her cheeks warm. He gestured for her to sit. "Lena, your father's creditors will not stop. They are using your name to access his debts. You cannot go back to that life." "I know," she said, her voice trembling. "Sexes. But what choice do I have? I cannot hide forever." He leaned forward, his tone steady, but kind. "You do not have to. I can help you start again, legally and safely. You can rebuild your life on your own terms." "Why would you do that for me?" she asked, her eyes searching his. "Because when I found you that night, I saw someone who still believed in freedom even when everything around her was falling apart," he said. "That kind of courage deserves a future." She felt tears sting her eyes. "I do not want charity," she said quietly. "This is not charity," he replied. "This is a partnership. I am starting a new foundation, one that helps women who have been forced into marriages or trapped by debt. I want you to be part of it. Help me shape it from the inside." She stared at him, speechless. "Me? You," he said. "You know what it means to fight for your own voice. That is something money cannot buy." The sincerity in his eyes left no room for doubt. Slowly, she nodded. "All right," she whispered. "I will do it." His smile was small but genuine. "Good. Then let us begin." Over the next few weeks, Lena worked side by side with him. She learned about contracts, outreach programs, and how to turn her pain into purpose. Every morning they met over coffee. Every evening they reviewed proposals. The world that had once seemed cruel began to open again, this time with hope. Yet beneath the calm rhythm of work, something else began to bloom. Something neither of them dared name. Sometimes, when their hands brushed while passing papers, the air seemed to hum with quiet electricity. One evening, as the sun dipped behind the skyline, Alex paused beside her desk. "You have done more in 1 month than most teams could in a year," he said. "You should be proud." She looked up at him, smiling softly. "You gave me the chance," she said. He shook his head. "You took it." Outside, the city glowed with life, but inside that office, it felt like the world had narrowed to two people who had found each other by accident and changed everything because of it. The days that followed felt almost unreal to Lena. She had gone from hiding in a stranger's car to walking through glass-walled boardrooms with her name printed on a badge that read, "Lena Hart, Program Director." Every morning when she entered Reed Holdings, she was greeted by the same receptionist who had once stared at her in shock on that first day. Now they smiled, and Lena smiled back. The foundation they were building together began to take shape, a project called Freedom Fund, designed to help women like her find legal aid, shelter, and new beginnings. It was Alex's idea, but he insisted she be the face of it. "People will listen to someone who has lived it," he said one evening, as they reviewed the latest proposals. She glanced up from her laptop, her voice soft. "And you? Why are you doing all this?" He leaned back in his chair, eyes drifting to the window where the city lights shimmered like 1,000 small promises. "Because power without purpose is empty," he said. "And because meeting you reminded me of what matters." His honesty made her heart tighten. For weeks they had worked side by side, learning each other's rhythms. He was patient but demanding, kind yet exacting. And though his world was one of polished suits and quiet authority, he treated her as an equal. She found herself looking forward to his calm presence, the way he noticed when she was tired, and wordlessly slid a cup of tea across her desk. One night, long after everyone had left, Lena was still in the office, finishing reports. the glow of her computer reflected in the window like another city beyond the glass. Alex appeared by the door, sleeves rolled up, his tie loosened. "Still here?" he asked. She smiled, rubbing her eyes. "Almost done. I did not realize it was so late." "You need rest too," he said, walking closer. "Even heroes have to sleep." She laughed quietly. "I am no hero." "You are to someone," he replied. The words hung between them, soft and unguarded. She looked at him, really looked at him. The man who had every reason to stay distant yet chose compassion instead. The silence was warm, charged with something unspoken. Before either of them could say more, his phone buzzed on the desk. He sighed, glancing at the screen. "It is the legal team," he said. "I should take this." She nodded, forcing a smile, though the sudden emptiness in the room felt sharper than it should. The next morning brought tension neither of them expected. News outlets had picked up the foundation's launch, but one headline twisted the story. "Runaway bride turned foundation face. Funded by her billionaire savior." Lena froze as she read the article, her stomach turning. The piece questioned her credibility, implying she had traded scandal for status. Reporters began calling the office nonstop. When Alex entered the room, she was already packing her bag. "I cannot stay," she said quickly. "This will ruin you." "Lena, stop," he said firmly. "You did nothing wrong. Let me handle it." "They will not believe that," she whispered. "They will think I am with you for money, that everything was planned." He stepped closer, his voice low, but steady. "Then let them talk. The truth does not need their approval." She shook her head, tears burning her eyes. "You do not understand. I cannot be another headline in your world." She tried to walk past him, but he caught her wrist gently. "Do not run from this," he said. "Do not run from me." For a heartbeat, she wanted to stay to believe him, but fear was louder than faith. She pulled away, whispering, "I have to." That night, she disappeared from the city again, leaving behind her ID badge and a letter on his desk. It said only, "Thank you for giving me back my freedom." Alex stood alone in his office, the skyline reflected in the glass, and for the first time in years, he felt the weight of what it meant to lose something real. Weeks passed before anyone at Reed Holdings dared to mention Lena's name again. Alex threw himself into work, attending meetings, reviewing contracts, and keeping his tone professional, but the quiet in his office felt different now. The chair across from his desk remained empty, and the coffee cup she used to leave behind stayed untouched on the shelf. Late at night, he often found himself staring at the painting of the lake that hung on the wall, the same one she had once admired, and wondering where she was. He had the resources to find her in minutes, but he did not. She had asked for freedom, and he would respect that, even if it hurt more than he expected. Across the city, Lena tried to start over. She rented a small studio apartment above a bakery, far from the business district, and began working at a community center that provided counseling and support to women in crisis. The work was hard but meaningful. She poured herself into it, trying to bury the ache that came every time she saw his name in the news. One afternoon, while sorting donated supplies, she came across a box of scarves. Among them was one that stopped her cold, a soft gray wool scarf, nearly identical to the one Alex had given her that night in the rain. She pressed it to her chest, eyes stinging, before folding it neatly back into the box. She told herself she had moved on, but every evening she found her thoughts drifting back to him the way he listened, the way he believed in her, before she believed in herself. Meanwhile, trouble was brewing at Reed Holdings. A rival executive had begun leaking details of the foundation's finances to the press, twisting them to make it look like misuse of funds. One headline read, "Freedom Fund faces fraud allegations." Though Alex had nothing to hide, the accusations threatened the very thing he had built with her. His board of directors demanded an explanation, and donors began pulling out. Alone in his office, he stared at the file on his desk, frustration tightening his chest. Without Lena, the project felt hollow. It was her heart that had given the foundation its purpose, her story that made people believe in it. He knew he needed to find her, not to fix the damage to his reputation, but to save what they had built together. That night, for the first time since she left, he made the call. When Lena's phone buzzed, she almost ignored it. The number was unfamiliar, but something in her gut told her to answer. "Hello?" she said cautiously. "Lena." His voice came through the line, deep and tired, but unmistakably his. "Alex?" she whispered. "It has been a long time." "Too long," he said. "I would not call if it were not important. The foundation is under attack. Someone is trying to destroy what we built, and I cannot fix it without you." She closed her eyes, torn between instinct and emotion. "Alex, I left for a reason. The attention, the headlines, it was too much." "I know," he said softly, "and I am sorry. I should have protected you better. But this is not just about us anymore. It is about the people we wanted to help." His words struck deep. She thought of the women who came to the center every day, looking for hope. Maybe walking away had protected her heart, but it had not protected them. "I will think about it," she said finally. "That is all I can ask," he replied. When the call ended, Lena sat in silence, staring at the scarf she had taken from the donation box. The gray wool looked almost silver in the fading light. Somewhere deep down, she knew the truth no matter how far she ran. Some connections could not be erased. That night, for the first time in months, she dreamed of the lake, the sound of rain, and the man who had once told her that safety was rare, but everyone deserved it. 2 days later, Lena stood outside the towering glass doors of Reed Holdings again, the same place she had once fled from. The security guard recognized her immediately and opened the door with a polite nod. Inside, the lobby looked the same, calm, sleek, and cold. But something inside her had changed. She was no longer the frightened runaway who hid behind borrowed coats. She was someone who had found her voice. When the elevator reached the top floor, Alex was waiting. For a moment, neither of them spoke. He looked different, tired, maybe even thinner, but the steadiness in his eyes was still there. "You came," he said quietly. "You asked," she replied. His lips curved slightly, a small, grateful smile. "Come in. There is something you need to see." He led her into the conference room, where several folders were spread across the table. "These are the fabricated reports," he said. "Numbers twisted to make it look like we misused donations. Whoever is behind this knew exactly where to strike." Lena picked up one of the documents, scanning the lines carefully. "This signature," she said, pointing to the bottom of a page. "It looks copied." "Exactly," Alex said. "They forged your name on reimbursement forms. The media thinks you took the money." The realization hit her like a physical blow. "Me? But I never—" "I know," he interrupted gently. "That is why I need you here. You are the only one who can clear this." She sank into a chair, overwhelmed but determined. "Then we fight back," she said. Over the next few hours, they worked together as they once had, side by side, focused and unbreakable. She traced paper trails, found inconsistencies, and pieced together the puzzle until one name appeared again and again. Nathan Pierce, a senior executive Alex, had fired months ago for unethical behavior. "He wanted revenge," Lena murmured. "He knew the foundation meant everything to you." "To us," Alex corrected. "He went after both of us." They decided to confront the board with evidence that afternoon. When the meeting began, the room buzzed with tension. Nathan was there, feigning innocence, his smile polished but cold. "Mr. Reed," one director began, "these allegations are serious. The public trust, Alex cut in firmly, is built on truth. And the truth is right here." He handed out copies of Lena's findings, each page marked with proof of forged documents and manipulated accounts. Gasps filled the room as the board members realized what had happened. Nathan's confidence faltered, his composure cracking. "This is ridiculous," he sputtered. "You cannot prove—" "Actually, we can," Lena said, standing. Her voice was calm but strong. "You left a digital signature on one of the altered files. I verified it myself." The silence that followed was absolute. Nathan's face drained of color. Security was called, and as he was escorted out, his glare lingered on both of them. When the door closed, the board broke into quiet applause. The accusations were dismissed, and the foundation was cleared of all wrongdoing. After the meeting, Alex turned to her, relief softening his features. "You saved this," he said. "You saved me." She shook her head, smiling faintly. "We saved it. Together." He looked at her then, really looked at her, as if realizing something he had tried to ignore for months. "Lena," he said softly, "I meant what I told you before. You deserve safety. But you also deserve more than that. You deserve someone who sees you. Completely." Her breath caught, but before she could answer, his assistant stepped in with a folder, breaking the moment. They exchanged a glance, both knowing what had been left unsaid. That night, when she finally left the building, the city lights reflected in the glass like 1,000 small stars. For the first time since she had run from her old life, she felt free again, not because someone had rescued her, but because she had learned to stand beside the person who once did. The following weeks were calmer, almost peaceful. The headlines that once questioned Lena's name were replaced with praise. "Freedom Fund clears allegations, a model for transparency," one article read. Donations poured back in, stronger than before, and the board publicly thanked Lena for her integrity and dedication. Still, despite the victory, something unspoken lingered between her and Alex. They worked together every day, side by side again, but both seemed careful not to cross the invisible line that had formed since that afternoon in the boardroom. He treated her with the same steady kindness, but there was a gentleness in his eyes now, a quiet admiration that words could not hide. One evening, after another long day of reviewing new partnership proposals, Alex closed his laptop and said softly, "Come with me. I want to show you something." They took the elevator down and stepped into the quiet streets. The city lights shimmered on the wet pavement as they walked toward the waterfront. The air smelled faintly of rain and salt. He led her to a new building still under construction, a modest 2-story space with glass walls and a banner that read, "The Freedom Center opening soon." Inside, the walls were bare, but Lena could already imagine what it would become. "This will be the first outreach facility," Alex said. "A place for counseling, education, and job training. The goal is to open 5 more across the country." She turned to him, amazed. "You never told me." "I wanted to wait until it was real," he said, "until I could show you what your courage started." Emotion welled in her chest. "Alex, I just told my story. You built all this." He shook his head. "No, you gave it meaning." For a moment, they stood in silence. The only sound, the soft hum of the city around them. Then he reached into his coat pocket and pulled out something wrapped in tissue paper. "I was going to save this for the opening," he said, "but I think you should have it now." She unwrapped it carefully. Inside was the gray wool scarf, the very one she had left behind in his car months ago, now framed behind glass, with a small brass plate beneath it that read, "The beginning of freedom." Lena gasped, her hand covering her mouth. "You kept it?" "It reminded me of that night," he said. "The night everything changed. Not just for you, but for me too." Her eyes filled with tears. "You really do not know how much that means to me." "I think I do," he said quietly. He stepped closer, close enough that she could feel the warmth radiating from him. "Lena, when I first met you, I thought I was helping a stranger, but now I realize you were the one who saved me. You reminded me what it means to feel something real again." His words hung in the air, raw and honest. She searched his face, her heart pounding. "And what do we do with that?" she asked softly. He smiled, a little uncertain, but hopeful. We stop pretending it is just gratitude, he said. We see where it goes. She looked down at the framed scarf, then back at him. Alex, I am not the same woman you rescued that night, she said. I am not afraid anymore. I know, he said, his voice almost a whisper. That is what makes me love you. The confession slipped out as naturally as breathing. For a heartbeat, neither of them moved. Then Lena stepped closer and rested her hand against his chest. Then, I guess it is my turn to save you, she said, smiling through tears. The lights from the street reflected in the glass, framing them both beside the symbol of how it all began. It was not a grand declaration or a fairy tale ending, just two people standing in the quiet, finally brave enough to call what they had found by its true name. A year later, the Freedom Center officially opened its doors. The morning sun poured through the tall windows, illuminating the lobby filled with flowers and quiet laughter. Lena stood near the entrance, greeting volunteers, her name printed beneath the title, Director of Programs. She looked calm, confident, and free the way she had always dreamed to be. Reporters snapped photos, but this time, she did not flinch. The world no longer saw her as a runaway bride or a scandal. They saw her as a woman who turned survival into purpose. Across the room, Alex was speaking with donors, dressed in his usual dark suit, but with softer edges now. When their eyes met across the crowd, he smiled, that same quiet smile that had started everything. Later, after the ceremony, the two of them slipped away to the garden behind the building. It overlooked the water, much like the lake where they first met. You did it, Alex said, his voice full of pride. No, Lena said gently, turning toward him. We did it, he laughed softly. You always correct me. Because you keep forgetting, she teased. Freedom is not something you give to someone. It is something you help them find. He nodded, thoughtful. You are right. And you helped me find mine too. She tilted her head, studying him. You? The man who already had everything? Everything but peace, he admitted. Until you. The sincerity in his voice made her chest tighten. For a while, neither of them spoke. The garden was filled with the sound of wind moving through the trees and the laughter of volunteers inside. It felt like life simple, beautiful, real. Alex reached into his jacket pocket and pulled out a small box. Before you say anything, he said, this is not about grand gestures or obligations. It is about choice. He opened it to reveal a delicate silver ring, understated and timeless. A year ago, you taught me that love is not ownership. It is partnership. So, I am not asking you to belong to me, Lena. I am asking if I can walk beside you. Her eyes filled with tears, not from surprise, but from the quiet certainty that this moment was exactly where her journey had led. She took the ring and whispered, Yes, but only if you promise one thing. Anything, he said. She smiled through the tears. Never forget how it started, a stranger in the rain, and a woman too scared to breathe. He chuckled, eyes soft. I could never forget that. It was the moment my life began to change. They stood together beneath the sunlight, his hand finding hers naturally, as if it had always been meant to fit there. Guests soon began calling them back inside, where a small celebration awaited. In the main hall, the framed gray scarf hung in its place of honor, beneath a brass plaque that read, The Beginning of Freedom. Lena paused in front of it, her fingers tracing the edge of the glass. It still feels unreal, she murmured. Alex came up beside her. That night, you gave away your fear. Now, look at what it became. She smiled, resting her head against his shoulder. A home for those who need one, she said. He kissed her temple softly. And for us too. The camera flash went off somewhere behind them, capturing the two of them, standing beneath the symbol of their shared journey. The world would see a headline about success, philanthropy, or love. But for them, it was simpler than that. It was a promise kept, a story that began in the storm and ended in the light. And as the doors of the Freedom Center opened to the public, Lena whispered the same words she had said on the night everything changed. Sometimes, the right thing to do is obvious. This time, Alex's answer came easily, and sometimes it leads you home.